Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host Khalid. But today is the 21st of August 2023 and these are the stories that we'll be discussing in detail during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the Jaranwala incident and the aftermath and how the government is reacting as far as this incident is concerned. The caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haq Kakar Sahab also visited Jaranwala and attended a ceremony to express solidarity with the people who have been affected by that. He said such culprits of such incidents will not be spared. Of course, an example needs to be made of culprits of such incidents, and the timing of it all is very suspicious because of the human rights day that was also coming just in a few days before this incident happened. The whole aspect of it reminds us that we need to be more cognizant of the fact, and the government through its different measures is also doing the needful. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the tweet that the President Arif Alvi Saab presented on Twitter, in fact posted on Twitter, in which he in a strange turn of events said that, as God is my witness, he did not sign the Official Secrets Amendment Bill and the Pakistan Army Amendment Bill 2023 as he had disagreed with these laws. On Saturday, it had been reported on various social media platforms and on different television stations that the bills had been signed and had been forwarded and of course were made into laws. And then of course came this tweet. How is all of this going to bode? What are the consequences? What are the reasonings behind of it all? We'll try to decipher some of that in our second story. Then we'll be talking about the Sutlej and of course the floods that are hampering normal activity, and of course you can see the images in the parallel window as well. Sutlej river has witnessed its worst flooding also because of the fact that India has opened its waters in the Sutlej river. Evacuations and relief efforts are underway, and of course 3 people have unfortunately drowned trying to escape the flood waters. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be talking about the Khairpur mate case, this 9-year-old girl who passed away after suffering abuse and torture, and this has now been proven in the post-mortem and the autopsy as well, that has confirmed physical torture on the girl's body. In a society that calls itself Islamic, it's very important that such cases need to be put as an example and not be repeated again, and proper punishment be given to the needful. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the Jaranwala incident. And of course we have all I've been talking last week in all of my shows about what happened in the incident, how many churches were set ablaze, how many people were affected, how this all happened, and of course the reaction that has come very swiftly by the government and how they have booked the people who were responsible behind it. At the same time, our caretaker Prime Minister also visited Jaranwala and expressed solidarity with the victims, and at the same time said that the culprits of such incidents will not be spared. Khurram Shahzad, who is an editor reporting Urdu news, joins us in the studio. Khurram, thank you very much to have joined us. Khurram, first of all, tell me, an incident such as this, and of course the reaction that has come, then the Punjab government considering an offer for a recompensation of damages between 200,000 and rupees 1 million, depending on the scale of the damage. Do you feel the efforts that the government is putting forward are enough? Do you feel more needs to be done?
I think the government has responded to this event very swiftly and very promptly. This is what we needed after such a tragic incident. But I think we need to consolidate it more. We need to continue these efforts, and we need to turn the claims into reality. This was a very welcome step by the Prime Minister, caretaker Prime Minister, of visiting the Christian community today, and it's welcoming that the government handed over checks today to the victims, and the Prime Minister said that he will not, actually the government will not spare anyone in future, and the law will take its course. But I think these claims needed to be in practical measures, needed to be turned into practical measures, and the culprits must be punished as soon as possible. The good thing is that the Prime Minister, as he went there, we know that he himself belonged from an underdeveloped area, and he himself is from a very humble background, and as he told people over there that he was taught by Christian teachers, so he knows the reality and he knows the how people suffer in such situations. So this step is very welcoming, but I think we should be more swift, more practical in taking measures which can actually change lives of minorities.
All right. Foreign Office spokesperson Khurram Mumtaz Zahra Baloch says intolerant and violent acts like the Jaranwala incident are unacceptable to the ethos of the Pakistani society. Do you feel that looking at the whole, timing of it all, the Human Rights Day coming a few days after the incident that happened, is this a conspiracy, a deliberate attempt to tarnish Pakistan's image?
Yes, we can't rule out that, because we have seen in past that such attempts have been made to tarnish the image of Pakistani communities and to spoil Pakistani efforts and Pakistan's image abroad. So we can't rule out that this is a deliberate effort. This is a very well planned effort, and how the circumstances were used and how the mob was converted. So we can say that there can be an involvement of such efforts to destroy the image of Pakistan.
Because a lot of things are happening. Pakistan's relationship with the West is getting better. Pakistan is now looking forward to a new GSP plus agreement with the European Union as well. The European Union that holds human rights very, very dear to its heart. I'd like to also understand, if you look in the past, if we go to 1997, Day of Thanksgiving in Shantinagar, which was burned to the ground by a mob, which of course happened in 1997. Then in 2009, 7 people burnt alive, 18 others injured in Gujarat over the alleged desecration of the Holy Quran. And there are so many other incidents that have happened in the past as well. Does the Jaranwala incident follow a similar pattern?
Yes, it does. I have been to Gujarat when it happened, and I have seen all those Christian houses and Christian communities, and I have seen ashes in the locality, and I have followed many other incidents. So this is the same pattern. Somebody accuses somebody for desecration of Holy Quran, and then somebody announces from a mosque, from another mosque, and then the whole community gathers, and the mob gets created, and then everybody attacks to these people. So nobody goes behind the event, go behind the scene to actually investigate what has happened. I just recall one thing what happened in Islamabad in G11. There is a slum. A few years back there was an incident that a girl was accused of doing blasphemy and burning the pages of Holy Quran, and a local imam accused her of doing this, and then there was agitation by Muslims, but then the incident was investigated, and at the end of the day it appeared that the incident didn't take place. So there is same pattern, and unfortunately it is being repeated again and again, and I think the authorities and government needs to do something to curb this.
There's another angle to it that I'd like to have your point of view on. According to the accounts that were given by the victims, rioters were hurling some kind of a red chemical from the rooftops that was strong enough to melt through iron. Do you feel that the use of corrosive chemicals should also be investigated?
Yes, of course, it should be investigated. Actually, each and every aspect of this incident should be investigated. And one thing what I would like to say is that our investigators and our security agencies should not spare anyone and should not spare any angle in this event, because what happens, I mean, we are making hue and cry these days, and once this goes behind the scene, once the curtains fall, and everybody will be forgetting this. I mean, government should make it sure that nobody forgets this. Somebody at the top level of the government, either it's Prime Minister, either it's Minister for Minorities, either it's Minister for Interior,
or human rights,
should make it sure that he or she should follow it step by step and to take it to the result.
We have seen a rise in religious extremism, intolerance that has led to an escalation of violence against minorities in Pakistan. Our ideology, when Pakistan was created, we have the white in our flag that represents all the minorities, irrespective of their caste, creed, or religion. How, in your point of view, can we reclaim this ideology of inclusivity of our country?
I think we should include minorities in everything, number one. Number two, there should be a system at the state level, at maybe at police station level or at community level, that whenever somebody accuses any minority member, there should be proper measures to protect minorities. There should be a system at the union council level, that whenever somebody is accused of blasphemy or any other action, this should be properly investigated by the authorities or community leaders, and no one should be allowed to take law in his or her hands, and nobody should be allowed to attack anyone in the country. So only by following these steps, I think we can ensure protection for minorities and other vulnerable communities of the country.
When you look at incidents such as these, mob violence, one thing that comes to mind is rule of law. Then proper, the way the justice should move ahead swiftly, and of course should pinpoint what are the lacunas, what are the issues, who is behind it, and of course arrest those people. But at the same time, there's also a lot of times a lack of education or information, a lot of disinformation spreads that leads to incidents such as these. How important is the role of the academia, of civil society, of local preachers and local muallims who give sermons in the mosques, in order to apprise people of what is the difference between right and wrong? Because as you yourself said, also in these incidents, it is sometimes the local a muezzin also who announces this in the mosque. How important is his role as well, in order to ascertain first of all what is right, what is wrong, and then report it to the authorities instead of urging for mob violence? His
role is very important and very crucial. Actually, he has a basic role. If he doesn't announce in a mosque, in a loudspeaker, that such thing has happened, nothing will happen. So instead of announcing it in a loudspeaker and in a mosque, he should go to the police station and he should report it, that something is happening like this, and then this is police job to investigate. I think we need to sensitize these people a lot. We need to run a proper program to sensitize these clerics, these imams, these muezzins, and then we should sensitize our teachers, our students. Proper teams should go to schools, colleges, and should tell students that we are doing wrong. This is a wrong thing. Whenever you see something wrong, you should report to the authorities instead of taking law into your own hands. So not only in this case, this is blasphemy is one thing, but we have witnessed so many events when somebody sees somebody stealing something and he takes law in his own hand and he starts beating the person. So this is wrong. I mean, instead of instead of he or she should take action, him or herself, in his or her own hands, they should inform the authorities, and it is the role of the authorities to take the necessary action. And secondly, these authorities should be vigilant. I mean, if something is happening wrong in in an area of a police station, I think the relevant police officials are not doing their job. So they should be properly aware of the situation in their own area. They should be well equipped. They should be, I mean, their spy networks and their own information networks should work properly, and they should be aware of this thing. Secondly, I would like to add that we used to have peace committees in every region, at every district level or city level or union council level. Then these police has their own informers. So where is that system? Why is not this working? There should be a system that links the local imams, the local clerics with the police of that area, so that in case of any such issue, that they inform the police, that takes the necessary action as per the law. Yes, and before the mob gets created, these people should come into action and should settle everything. So I mean, this is a missing link between the society and authorities. The authorities should be more assertive. They should create this system. They should come ahead. They should go a step forward, and they should they should work for this, and they should realize their responsibility. This is actually police responsibility. This is administration responsibility to teach clerics, to teach students, to teach everybody in the society. Okay, these are do's and these are don'ts. Don't cross these limits. Don't violate others' rights. So I mean, they should come forcefully. And on the same side, when you look at the past, when you look at different angles of stories that we hear and we watch and we kind of digest or are not able to digest because of the severity of the incident, the fact remains that sometimes all of these incidents are used for other purposes as well, and the whole purpose of blasphemy or tarnishing the image of our Holy Prophet ﷺ or our religion is not the basic reason for it all, but it is used as a pretext. How can we also control that? I mean, that is very tricky, but unfortunately in our country, if anybody accuses anybody else for blasphemy, the third person will not listen for a minute, he will not think for a minute, he will just attack. And you must know that in Pakistan there are more Muslim victims of this law instead of minorities victims. There are more Muslims in prison for committing blasphemy than Christians or Hindus or any other religion. So this is a matter of grave concern. Actually, unfortunately and very sadly, this law has been misused for long, has been used by people for their own purpose, for their own individual purposes and interests. So, I mean, if somebody has some dispute with a minority member, or even with a Muslim,
some other kind of dispute, he will use this as
on property, so they just accuse somebody and propagate it, and then suddenly a mob comes and attacks. So this is very unfortunate.
Do you feel that the law should also come in handy when it comes to such kind of mob violence, so that such incidents of mob getting together and creating what it did, for example in Jaranwala, does not happen again?
I think when you talk about mob violence, you should also talk about the will of our security agencies, particularly police. Our police is they do actions when they are acting against some individuals or some political people or other, but when they need to do it, they don't take any action. So when a mob comes, instead of tackling the mob, police gets defeated even before fighting, even before tackling them, even before starting to handle them. I mean, they just go on a corner, they just watch and wait, and they allow the mob to do whatever they want. And once they are cool themselves, then police comes on the scene and then tries to do something. But I mean, we have been talking to police officials while reporting on field, and we know that this is part of their strategy. They don't clash with mob because they think that there will be their own casualties if they fight against a mob. But I think this is wrong practice.
Already the terrorists are claiming so many casualties as far as our police agencies are concerned. Nevertheless, what is the answer to violent extremism and religious bigotry in your point of view as a Pakistani and as a journalist?
Sorry, I didn't get.
What is the answer? How can we counter violent extremism and religious bigotry?
Yes, we can counter it by providing education to more children, by sensitizing our society, but by going to grassroots level and harmonizing different communities, getting them together in same room at the same place, and by educating them together and sensitizing them about each other, and producing more literature which can harmonize different communities and which can promote humanism between different communities. Our young children or young men and women should be aware of what they are doing and should be sensitized enough about the vulnerable communities, about minorities, about other communities at risk. So I think by educating them we can curb it.
All right, let's hope some kind of this sets an example for the whole society to come as one to tackle such incidents, because when we see incidents like Jaranwala or any such incident, this is of course hampering not only our faith in and the whole one of the whole concepts behind the creation of Pakistan, that is interfaith harmony, but also our image abroad. I mean, and also these are our people, these are Pakistanis at the end of the day. We need to think on those terms as well. Let's hope better sense prevails in all of these people who create such mob violence. Thank you very much, Khurram, Shahzad, to have joined us, to have talked to us, editor reporting Urdu News, talking to us in the studios, ladies and gentlemen, and of course highlighting what needs to be done. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns this tweet that was sent by our President Arif Alvi Saab, in which he talked about the Official Secrets Amendment Bill 2023 and the Pakistan Army Amendments Bill, and he said that he had told his staff not to send those. At the same time, the fact remained that on Saturday many of the news channels highlighted and talked about these two laws having been passed. So the fact remains that under the circumstances, what should we interpret as the truth? What should we look forward as far as these two important laws are concerned? We've been joined by Irfan Qadir Sahab. He's the former Attorney General of Pakistan. Irfan Sahab, it's a pleasure to have you here for our show. Irfan Sahab, I'd like to understand, isn't this more or less a kind of a constitutional crisis that we are grappling with following this posting of the tweet by our president?
No, it is not constitutional crisis. It only establishes one thing, and that is that President has absolutely no clue of Article 75 of the Constitution, and in sheer ignorance of Article 75 of the Constitution, the President has taken this view, and according to the President, the bill is returned so that it may become ineffective. So President cannot thwart a law, cannot place obstacles in the way of the process of legislation as is envisaged in the Constitution. So here he wanted to thwart that process by not following Article 75, according to which President has two options. One option is he may assent to the bill, and the other option is that he may send it back to Majlis-e-Shura for reconsideration after giving reasons for that. And since both these courses have not been adopted by the President, which are specifically contained in Article 75, the President, therefore, though not assented to the bill, but would be deemed to have assented to this bill, and therefore it has now become a valid law.
All right. Now, looking at the whole, the way it is being circulated in different media by different points of views, do you feel an investigation into the matter is needful or necessary?
I don't think any investigation is required, because if we take the President's word that whatever the President is saying is true, so President has not minced any words. He simply says that he left it unsigned and told his staff that let it become ineffective. And this, if we take it as the President has said, this in itself is unconstitutional. This course is not available to the President under the Constitution. This is tantamount to thwarting the process of legislation as envisaged in the Constitution, and therefore Constitution doesn't allow the President to stop the legislation, because President's position is basically titular position, and the only power that is available with the President, which is limited, and that is to the extent of reconsideration by the Majlis-e-Shura of the bill, but President has also not exercised that power here. So if President is failing to perform his obligations under the Constitution, the legislative process cannot stop.
All right. Irfan Qadir Sahab, as far as the legality of these two laws that now have been passed, the Official Secrets Act and the Army Amendment Acts bill, what do you feel, does that legal status of these two laws change after the statement by the President, or everything remains the same?
The only change that it can bring is that those people who are going to be affected by the law would endeavor to challenge this matter in the Supreme Court, and then Supreme Court will be in the dock, and the nation will be looking at the Supreme Court as to whether Supreme Court is going to act in consonance with the Constitution or not.
All right. That was Irfan Qadir Sahab, former Attorney General of Pakistan. Our line unfortunately seems to be disconnected. He was giving us his point of view as far as the tweet that the President of Pakistan posted a couple of, in fact, a day after it had been announced in all of the traditional media as far as this is concerned, this whole incident is concerned. And he, of course, he talked about the legality of this, and he said that he talked about the position of the President, and he talked about the legality of these two important laws that the President has talked about in the tweet that he has posted. Let's come to our next segment, and that concerns the situation in Pakistan post the floods. And of course, the floods are still going on. The river Sutlej has surged to extremely high levels at Ganda Singhwala barrage. That has resulted in the evacuation evacuation of hundreds of families. We did talk and allude to that as well on Friday, that India had opened the flood waters in the river Sutlej, and that was going to create the situation that has been created now. As we can see, the water level has risen to 23 feet, a flow of 269,000 cusecs at the Jaranwala barrage. Punjab caretaker Chief Minister Mohsin Naqvi Saab has said that the flood in the Sutlej was unprecedented in 35 years, and he visited the flood affected areas and relief camps at the Sutlej Talwar post near the Ganda Singh border. Waqar Shirazi joins us online. Waqar, thank you very much to have joined us. How do you see this whole situation? Because on Friday, of course, India had opened up the waters in the Sutlej River, and we already were expecting something that happened today to have happened. Is this a normal process that happens every year as far as India is concerned? B, the preparatory levels as far as the low-lying areas in Sutlej River is concerned and the evacuation of the people, is that going on at a steady pace? These are two parts of the same question.
Many thanks indeed, Omar, for having me on the show. But for analyzing the situation, whether it is a normal process or not, we'll have to understand the treaty between the two countries. The Indus Basin Treaty gives 3 eastern rivers rights to India. But according to the treaty, India has to maintain the bare minimum level of water flow in downstreams in Pakistan. But over the decades, we have observed that India does not maintain that 19% river current in downstreams of Pakistan, which has turned the Satluj and Ravi basin area into desert, affecting lives of many people throughout the area. But when it comes to the heavy downpour in India and the water becomes unmanageable for them, they release it to Pakistan. Sounds to be subhuman because it then affects lives of hundreds and thousands of people living within the basins of Satluj and Ravi, since for decades these rivers are no longer existent in Pakistan. So
as far as disaster is concerned, such disasters, we've seen in the 2022 floods, and we are seeing again in 2023, not to that extent as last year, but nevertheless they are important, and now we are seeing what is happening in Sutlej. What needs to be done? What is the priorities that the government has taken and should take, as a preventive measure in case of such disasters?
Well, I believe that most of the time we had to try that India has released the unannounced water towards Pakistan, and it has resulted into a situation of floodings in many rural areas, and many of the lives were on risk, and then it causes devastation throughout the area. But when it comes to our own preparation, we'll have to understand that this water is also life to us, because whenever they have to release some of the waters in downstreams of Pakistan, this water becomes an element which recharges the water table beneath the surface in that area. Moreover, it provides additional water supply to the ecosystem, to the micro ecosystem we have in the rivers, which has been badly affected because of the Indus Basin Treaty and its non-compliance by India in terms of not releasing a regular 19% water in Ravi and Satluj and Beas. In terms of preparation, we can turn this challenge into an opportunity by introducing an diversion system of this water to many of the other canals and rest of the rivers. But whenever they release water, it becomes a challenge for us. So first of all, it requires an infrastructure with planning and with quality construction throughout the river belts. And then it requires an early warning system, which can be based on the effective coordination between the two countries, that India may intimate Pakistan well in time before releasing the water, that this situation is arising in our country, and we will be releasing some of the water to the downstreams, which can cause an emergency situation, which is coincidentally not the case in terms of Pakistan and India's diplomacy, since the conditions between the two countries are most of the time tense and tough.
But Waqar, you know, the fact remains that despite a tense situation between two countries, it is the responsibility of countries such as India to, I mean, and because this is nothing new. Every year we see that, every year we are witness to the waters being, you know, entering Pakistani territory and then causing havoc as they cause every year, more or less, you know, with the casualties, with the crops being destroyed, and with people's houses and people's lives also at stake. Isn't this the responsibility of India to have had already that in place, irrespective of the differences that both countries have?
I think on humanitarian grounds, on ethical grounds, it is a responsibility on any country of the world that it should contribute and play its role in successfully supporting the lives of the people and in any region of the world. But coincidentally, unfortunately, it is the case that without prior or without prior intimation, many of the additional water, most of the additional water is released towards Pakistan. But being Pakistani, we'll have to understand that water is life. We can convert this challenge into an opportunity. So what is lacking on our side, we'll have to work on that, because we cannot do much with by saying that India is a subhuman country and they have no ethical values and they release.
But Waqar, you talk of, you know, converting challenge into an opportunity. This is something that we see every year happening. How can we do that for next year, for example, in 2024? How can we be ready to you know, completely change this whole situation that we encounter every year during the monsoon?
As I have said, that we can have a plan that we can divert this water to rest of the areas, and with effective and efficient diversion plan, we can turn this challenge into an opportunity. We can use this water to recharge our water table in our desert areas, including Bahawalpur and Bahawalnagar and rest of the areas within the map of the river Beas and Satluj. The other thing we have to do, that we'll have to have an early warning system, and then we'll have to have a rescue and evacuation efficient model in these areas, because we know that every year or every second or third year this situation can happen in these areas. So what we need to have an infrastructure which can help in evacuation of people without any loss or with minimum losses to their assets.
All right, Waqar, also when it comes to the people who live in these low-lying areas that are most susceptible to the after effects of flooding, what should the people in those areas also on their own take as precautions?
I think the partial responsibility goes to the people as well, because since the river flow is near to zero in these two rivers, and people are now cultivating within the river belts, within the actual bed of the river. They have some of the wells in the river bed, and then they irrigate their lands with those water and they cultivate there. So whenever the flood situation arises, they are the first victims. And in this regard, government will have to pass some regulations. But since we have another challenge of food security in Pakistan and our population is growing exponentially, we need to have more area under cultivation. So which is again a catch-22 situation for us to decide whether to allow the farmers to cultivate within the basins of river or to prohibit them for doing this. I think that what we can do in this regard to educate the farmers that the early warning system is for them. And after the announcement, they have to believe on the government announcements, and they should make immediate efforts to evacuate the area along with their cattle and along with their precious belongings. I think this can be the most possible way to protect people and to have minimum losses in the area.
Waqar, there's another thing altogether as far as the people in the area are also concerned. Many are reluctant to move from their ancestral homes from the areas where they have cultivated lands. We saw that in the 2022 floods. Even now in Sutlej, following reports that people in the affected villages were reluctant to leave, Section 144 had to be imposed and implemented in letter and spirit. How can we persuade these people that it is for their benefit that we are trying to move them at least temporarily so that they are not affected by the floods?
Well, this is not unnatural. People have affiliation with their land, with their homes, with their belongings, and with their culture and with their villages. This is not unnatural. This phenomena is found in many areas of the world. So people normally don't listen to the early warning system. When they listen, they're not ready to believe it. The governments then jump into and they took the necessary measures as we have taken now, and we have announced that an emergency situation, and we have to convince people, and then after some of the people were not convinced to leave their areas, government has to impose its decision. I think it is the only way, but we can improvise in many of the ways. We can provide the farmers with the with the compensation amount for even evacuation from the area. Then it will be a smoother process rather than just motivating them by or forcing them to leave their areas. Because most of the time, these rural people with very minimum resources don't have even resources to move from one place to other place. Movement is a cost-intensive process. And for this, you have to provide support, not in terms of financial support, but we can provide them with the logistic support to evacuate from the area.
All right, Waqar. Disasters such as these happen more or less every year, but the frequency has increased dramatically because of climate change, because of other factors that are affecting, the amount of rains that happen every year. The world as such is also changing when it comes to effects such as climate change or the El Nino phenomenon, and so on and so forth. But does the world, Pakistan has highlighted climate change on many forum. Do you feel that the world has realized, because we see in the US also there are things, there are events that are happening in other parts of the world also, and in Pakistan as well. Is there a realization, or people are still brushing it off as something that happens and then move to the next chapter?
I think that partly Pakistan remained successful in its diplomacy on the forum of realizing world that Pakistan is the most affected country by the climate change. But we'll have to understand the other side of the story as well, that the priorities of the international community are not on totally humanitarian grounds. Cosmetically they are, but their priorities are in terms of lobbying and in terms of controlling the economies and controlling the decision power of the world, like we have been observing in previous areas of Cold War and then now towards the Ukrainian war. In terms of 2022 flood, the number of individuals affected in Pakistan were more than the number of individuals affected in Ukrainian war. But for that particular area, the European community and America, they were asking for $400 billion donation to be collected and to be provided to that very country. We are not against that donation, because that is again on humanitarian grounds. But when it translated for Pakistan, the $10 billion pledges were merely made, and they were not even then fulfilled. We have not so far received the $10 billion pledged amount. I think we'll have to change the strategy. We will have to ask the international community for the carbon credits. Since we are producing carbon credits by afforestation in Pakistan, we have cultivated many of the trees in Pakistan, and we are producing less than 1% of the carbon footprints. We'll have to make more efficient and effective claims on the international forums, on COP conferences, and divert the attention of the international community towards Pakistan, that Pakistan is no longer ready to bear the cost, despite contributing less than 1% in international carbon footprint count.
All right, Waqar. I hope that the world also realizes, the world makes tangible decisions that are that need to be effective immediately, because this is not a Pakistani concern or a concern of the subcontinent. This is a global concern that the world needs to be as one in order to tackle before it's way too late. We are seeing the effects. We've seen the effects in Pakistan in 2022. We're seeing the effects in Pakistan in 2023, and God knows what is going to happen in the coming years as far as climate change is concerned for the region. But the fact remains that it's the collective responsibility of the world to tackle this as a priority. There are the priorities as well, but this is also one of the priorities. Thank you very much, Waqar Shirazi, disaster management expert, to have joined us to talk about the floods this year and the effects of those floods, and of course the opening up of the water in the Sutlej River by India, that many call water terrorism as well, but of course that leads to disasters in our country as well. But that said, what Kakar says also is that we need to take the positive of every situation and try to use the water that comes into the Pakistani territory to our benefits, and so that in the future we can take the same water and reroute it or use it for the benefit of our society. Before we end, let's come to a delicate situation, and that is something that we have been seeing, ladies and gentlemen, for quite some time. Many incidents come and go of young children who were brutalized, who are tortured, who are raped, whether it be in a house, whether it be elsewhere. This incident of a 9-year-old girl who passed away in Khairpur's Ranipur area, allegedly from torture at the house that she worked as a minor housemaid, has created ripples as far as society is concerned. Because of the autopsy that was made on the young girl, we would maybe not have known the extent of the injuries that she went through, but where we got to know it because of this post-mortem. The report talks about all the injuries that are ante-mortem in nature. When I say ante-mortem, it means this happened before the death of the individual. The medical board also concludes that the findings are suggestive of sexual assault on the young girl, and that is also something that is not a revelation in such, but this is something that we need to tackle with on a very urgent basis. On the 17th of August, the Khairpur police had also arrested the key suspect in the case, who was later remanded into police custody. Now, the first information report that was taken up as far as this the mother's complaint of this girl is concerned at Ranipur police station under section 34 common intention and 302 premeditated murder of the Pakistan Penal Code is what led to this autopsy, and this is what has led to these findings that are a very sad reflection, in fact, on our society. As a society that is in a country that calls itself the Islamic Republic, it is a country where we need to look at these things and also not only highlight wherever this happens, but also be a part of ending such practices. I will be one who will be doing that at the very earliest. Whoever wants to join is more than welcome. With that, we end today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news stories and segments that pertain to you, us and Pakistan. Till then, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.